The next 100 years, always when we talk about the future, we talk in an analytical and graphic way. Only God knows the unseen, but events in the present are only part of the past and a prelude to the future. Writer Friedman expects in his book the next 100 years, political, technological, geopolitical, social and economic events terrifying. So he expects the United States will remain the dominant force for at least the 21st century. But emerging global powers such as Russia and China will compete with it. In early 2020, the new Cold War will end after it has caused enormous economic and social pressures. In addition to a decrease in the population and a weak Russian infrastructure, which may cause the collapse of the Russian federal government, completely like what happened in the Soviet Union, in addition to the collapse of the former Soviet Union countries. Around this time, China will fragment politically and culturally. The author asserts that the rapid economic development of China since 1980 will lead to internal pressures and inequality in the Chinese society. On the Chinese mainland, a regional tension will increase between the booming coastal regions and the impoverished inland regions. Friedman offers two possible scenarios: that the Chinese central government expels foreign interests and rules with an iron fist to keep the country together, or that China will disintegrate and the central government gradually loses much of its real power and the provinces become quasi-autonomous. It is assumed that fragmentation is the most likely scenario. In the 1920s, the collapse of the Russian government and the splitting of the mainland China would leave Eurasia in a general anarchy. Other powers will then move to annex or establish spheres of influence in the region, and in many cases, regional leaders will separate in Russia, the North Caucasus and other Islamic regions, as well as the eastern regions will become independent. Finland will annex Karelia, Romania will annex Moldova, and Tibet will gain its independence with the help of India. Taiwan will extend its influence to mainland China, while the United States and the European powers will re-establish regional spheres of influence in mainland China. The emergence of new powers. In the 1920s and 1930s, three major powers will emerge in Eurasia: Turkey, Poland, and Japan. Turkey will expand its sphere of influence and become an influential region, as it was during the era of the Ottoman Empire. Turkey's sphere of influence will extend to the Arab world, which by then will be increasingly divided, and further north into Russia and the other former Soviet states. Israel will continue to be a powerful nation, and it will be the only country in the region that will remain outside the Turkish sphere of influence. However, Israel will be forced to reach a settlement with Turkey due to Turkey's military and political might. Meanwhile, Japan will expand its economic influence to include coastal regions in China, the Russian Far East, and many Pacific islands. Friedman expects Japan to change its foreign policy during this time period, to become more geopolitically aggressive, to begin a major military buildup, and it will build a military force capable of projecting its influence regionally across East Asia. Finally, Poland will continue to lead its military alliance, the Polish Bloc. Poland and its allies will be a great power, and it will expand its economic influence to what was previously known as European Russia. And it will begin to compete with Turkey for influence in the important economic zone in the Volga River Valley. Around this time, space programs for military use will begin to emerge, and Japan and Turkey will increasingly begin to develop military space capabilities. The tensions mount. The United States will be allied with Turkey and Japan for more than 75 years. However, in the years following the end of the Second Cold War and the collapse of Russia, the relations with the United States would gradually become tense as a result of Turkey and Japan expanding their military power and economic influence. By creating regional spheres of influence, Turkey and Japan will begin to threaten U.S. interests. The growth of Turkish and Japanese naval strength and their military activities in space will be particularly troublesome for the United States. The author confirmed that Turkey and Japan have similar interests, and it is likely that they will form an alliance near the end of the 30s of this century, attempting to confront the overwhelming global power of the United States. Germany and Mexico might also join this anti-American alliance. In this coming confrontation, the United States will ally with the Polish bloc, and most likely the United Kingdom, China, which has been restored, and India and the United Korea. By the 1940s, there will be a global tension and competition between these two alliances. Demographic change. The book also predicts that decades of low birth rates in developed countries, especially in Europe, will lead to dramatic cultural, social, and political transformations during the first half of the 21st century. These countries will face economic and social pressures stemming from a declining demographic of working age and rapidly aging populations. As a result, in the 1920s and 1930s, Western countries would begin to compete for immigrants. In particular, the United States will significantly relax immigration controls and begin trying to lure foreigners, especially Mexicans, to immigrate to the United States. However, later in the century, when robots begin to render human labor obsolete, it will produce mass unemployment, and the United States, which is experiencing a labor surplus, will move to reduce immigration once again. Limited World War III. In the middle of the 21st century, around the year 2050, a third world war will break out between the United States, the Polish bloc, the United Kingdom, India, and China, the Allies, on the one hand, and Turkey and its areas of influence, Japan, Germany, and France, the new Axis, on the other hand. The war will likely begin with a coordinated Turkish-Japanese infiltration attack against the United States and its allies. Friedman predicts the attack will happen while the soldiers in the United States are on vacation. The first strike of the Turkish-Japanese alliance would cripple the military capabilities of the United States and its allies. The Turkey-Japan alliance would then attempt to enter into negotiations, demanding the United States to accept the status of the Turkey-Japanese alliance as a fellow superpower. However, the United States will reject the terms and go to war, refusing to accept the Turkish and the Japanese domination of Eurasia. The Japanese-Turkish alliance would initially gain a military advantage after paralyzing the US military during the first strike. However, as the war progresses, the balance of power will begin to shift as the United States rebuilds its military capabilities and become the leader in the use of the new military technologies. The war would ultimately end in a symbolic victory for the United States and its allies, with Turkey and its allies imposing new conditions and maps. The primary weapons of war will be the long-range hypersonic aircraft and infantrymen with advanced highly protective armor and robots that will play a critical role throughout the conflict, with space weapons, systems, and military bases on the moon playing an important role. The war will last for about 2 or 3 years. According to Friedman, the war would be a limited, non-destructive war, and precision-guided munitions would reduce collateral damage. Friedman estimated that the war would cost about 50,000 people. After the war, the United States will enjoy a new boom in the post-war period. This boom will start in the 1950s and continue throughout the 1960s. However, the new Axis countries will impose their new conditions on the Allied countries. They will have a place in the new UN Security Council and an opinion on all existing events and circumstances. Meanwhile, Poland's power will grow due to the enlargement of the Polish bloc as a result of the war, although its infrastructure and the economy have been shattered, and despite its heavy losses, Poland will take the advantage of growing sphere of influence of the Polish bloc to rebuild its economy. The United States will begin to view the growing power of the Polish bloc as a potential threat in the future. To prevent Polish domination of Europe, the United States will ally with its former enemies, Japan and Turkey, as well as the United Kingdom, to prevent Poland from controlling Eurasia and prevent Poland from using space for military purposes. The American-Mexican conflict. According to the author, North America will remain the center of gravity of the global economic and political system for at least a few more centuries after the 21st century. However, this does not guarantee that the United States will always dominate North America. In the decades following the war, which began in the 1970s, tensions between Mexico and the United States will increase. By this time, after decades of mass immigration, large parts of the United States, especially the Southwest, will be predominantly Mexican, ethnic, cultural, and social. During this period, many Mexicans living in the southwestern United States will avoid becoming increasingly integrated into the American culture due to the fact that they will live in a predominantly Mexican region, as well as being close to Mexico. Most Mexicans in the southwestern United States will be recognized as Mexicans, not Americans, and their national loyalty will be to Mexico rather than to the United States. During this period, Mexico will experience significant economic and population growth. By the end of the 21st century, Mexico's military and economic power will have grown tremendously, and it will be a position to challenge the United States' dominance in North America. In addition to the Mexican separatist rebellion, political, cultural, and military tensions between the United States and Mexico will escalate and turn into a full-blown confrontation. A protracted crisis will rise between the United States and Mexico, a crisis that the United States will not be able to solve using the military force. Most of the countries in the world that oppose to the US hegemony will secretly hope for a victory in Mexico, especially Poland and Brazil, but no other country will directly intervene. Friedman predicted that the conflict would continue into the 22nd century. Technological forecasts. Among the technological prospects in the book are the development of the hypersonic aircraft and missiles, new space technology that will promote the development of military bases on the moon, and manned orbiting military platforms, referred to in the book as the Stars Battle, and robotic combat suits. In addition, the Earth will be provided with solar energy collected from satellites that send energy to the Earth in the form of radiation to receiving stations on Earth, which will end the dependence on hydrocarbons. And the tremendous developments in robotics and genetic sciences will lead to a significant increase in labor productivity and increased grade in human longevity. He also hints at nuclear weapons expanding to become more widespread, claiming that Japan, Turkey, and Poland will possess nuclear weapons by mid-century, and the technology will be a century old by that time, and there will be no ambiguity about how it is built and delivered.